Bra, hører dere meg greit? Føler meg litt sånn Justin Bieber akkurat nå, med den mikken her. Ikke vant til det. Bra. Vi kommer til å gjøre det her på engelsk, bare så dere vet det. Men først av alt, hei og velkommen til Palestinapodden live i sokkelhesten.
Yes, som sagt, vi kommer til å gjøre det på engelsk, så da bare begynner vi med det med en gang. Today we are very lucky to have Farah Sami Miqdad with us, who is a medical student from Gaza, one of the 10 who came here on exchange to Oslo to resume their degree in medicine, since all the universities in Gaza are bombed and destroyed by Israel in the genocide on Gaza.
Farah is on her 5th year of medicine at Al-Azhar University Gaza and has a strong commitment to the medical and humanitarian aid fields. She is passionate about bridging healthcare and community well-being. And she is experienced in student-led projects and volunteer work. She worked during the past few months with Ingo in facilitating healthcare services to Gaza's injured children in Egypt.
So, please give a warm welcome to Farah. Thank you so much, Farah, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to be here and to see this amount of support and beautiful young people being here present to hear me speak.
I want to ask you first, how are you?
Oof, that's a tough question, but it's so nice to finally be able to somehow have a resemblance of a normal life. Trying our best. We've always been trying. So yeah, I think I'm good. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. You are born and raised in Gaza before the genocide. Could you describe Gaza for us who has never been there?
Oh, if you asked me the same question like, I don't know, a year ago, I would say, oh my God, I can't wait to go out of Gaza. But for now, I really can't wait to go back. Gaza is a beautiful, crowded city. When you think about Gaza, you instantly think about the sea. It's my favorite place there. So regardless of it being under blockade for over 17 years, almost most of my life so far. Gaza is known for how resilient its people are and how much they cling into trying to make something out of nothing. You'd find like a place with an illiteracy rate of nearly nothing. It's like 1.9% of the people. People there try their best to be the best at everything. And it amazes me always how they are strong spiritually. So when you think about Gaza, you think about its people, the warmth it has, the beauty it's trying to create regardless of everything and everyone trying to diminish that.
Because for those who don't know about the blockade in Gaza, can you also describe that? Because it hasn't been there forever.
Okay, yeah. For me, I'm 24-year-old. The blockade started around 2005. That was when I was like 5 years old. So I really don't remember much about life prior to the blockade. When I say blockade, I mean that for the longest period of time, nothing was allowed into or outside of Gaza. When I say nothing, I also include people as well. So there has been a land blockade, so borders are closed. Of course, like we had once an airport back in 2000. It was established in 1999 and it was bombed in 2001. So, which means that nothing can get into the sky of Gaza and nothing can leave from there. And sea blockade that Fishermen are only allowed up to 3 kilometers into the Mediterranean Sea. That's where Gaza lies on its coast. So a blockade is like air, water, and land blockade. And every time you want to go out of Gaza, you'd have to apply through permits and like a prolonged, tiring procedure to exit, whether through the 2 only land borders there are. We have 2 main borders, one with Egypt, and that's called the Rafah crossing, which has been closed during the ongoing genocidal war in Gaza since February. It was closed in May, beginning of May. You kind of lose the sense of time with everything going. So please excuse me when I'm like mixing up some of the dates or the months. I don't keep track of anything anymore.
It's very understandable.
Yeah. And the other crossing would be with the occupied Palestinian lands, and it's controlled by the Israeli forces, and it's called the Erez crossing, and that's the one where the events on 7th of October has happened and has led to the ongoing genocide.
Mm-hmm. So this is a very important distinction, because that's not known to everybody, that it's a lot of refugees from other places in Palestine in Gaza. Mm-hmm. Are your family originally from Gaza, or are they refugees as well?
Well, funny enough, I grew up as a refugee in my own country. So my family are originally from a town called Hamama, which translates literally to a pigeon. And it's right on the northern western part of the Gaza Strip. It's like 2 kilometers away from the coast, and around like 30 kilometers away from the northern part of Gaza Strip currently. So yes, around 70% of Gaza's population are not originally from Gaza. And they were internally displaced into Gaza Strip in 1948 when Nakba happened, catastrophe, where like the Palestinian lands were occupied and people had been displaced to either Gaza Strip, the West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, some to Egypt, and some have fled to different countries across the world. So in 1948, Hamama, my original town, had around 5,000 people. Now we are around 60,000 people originally from Hamama. So, and everyone who came into Gaza, the West Bank, or any of the nearby countries, they're being registered as refugees within an entity called the UNRWA. I don't know if you heard of it, the UNRWA. It's like a UN agency that facilitate or provide services to Palestinian refugees after 1948, and this which has given us the refugee status while inside Gaza Strip. So we do go to different schools from those originally from Gaza. We do we are provided with certain health services, educational services, and relief services through the UNRWA.
And UNRWA also exists in other countries. My father, who grew up in Lebanon, went to a UNRWA school as well.
Yeah.
You've, speaking of schools, you've studied abroad. You were telling me a bit about it on the drive here. Could you tell us a bit about your studies?
Well, when you grow up, you learn that education is the most renowned and the best form of resilience you can have. You always work on improving your knowledge, improving your skills, your abilities, to be a better person, a better Palestinian, and a better representative of the country. And in 2016, I was accepted into the United World Colleges, that's UWC for short. It's an international boarding school teaching international baccalaureate diploma programs, IB program, and I believe there is one here in Norway. I don't know its name. but there are 18 different schools across the world. And when I was accepted in 2016, I attended the one in Armenia, Delijan. Armenia is a country towards the eastern part of Europe, close to Turkey, Azerbaijan, Russia, and Georgia. So yeah, I studied there for 2 years, and I had left Gaza at the age of 15 years old through the Israeli crossing. And we were just talking about like the whole crossing experience, which when it starts, it never ends.
Tell us a bit more about that. What do you mean?
So basically, things are always changing, the restrictions, the rules, etc. So back in 2016, if you wanted to cross to go outside of Gaza through the areas crossing, the one controlled by the Israeli occupation, you would have to apply for a permit at least like few months before, like we're talking 3 months or something. And the permit's approval is you're only informed of that approval 12 hours before you're traveling. So you'd be planning your whole journey and you might not be approved, and you'd only know about it a few hours before you would have to cross. And you have to do a lot of paperwork with guarantees of a non-objectivity from the Jordanian side, a permit through the Israeli side, an explanation of why you're leaving, when you're leaving, what you're going to be doing. And as you cross, you're not allowed, for example, to bring, a case with a wheel. You're only allowed a carry-on, for example. You're not allowed to bring any liquids. You're being manually checked. You're subjected to investigation. Your phone is being taken away, your money, everything, and you're only left with your clothes on. And then after a while, you'd get everything back after hours of waiting at lines and dealing with soldiers. And for a 15-year-old, this experience was so surreal. Like, it's normally, if we imagined a world with no occupation, you would cross from Gaza to Jordan border within a 2 hours drive. But it took me like 14 hours to get to the Jordanian bridge and to cross to Jordan. And yeah.
Why do you think they do this? Why do you think you get the message that you're able to travel 2 hours before? Why do they take away your phone? Why are they so strict, do you think?
It's a constant reminder of their existence as an occupation. It's not that you forget any time with a drone buzzing 24/7 over your head for most of your life. You kind of get used to it, which is heartbreaking when you realize it. And it's one of many forms of proving their existence. They prove their existence through the struggle they impose on Palestinian people. Whether if you're from Gaza, you're subjected to bombing, restrictions, blockade. If you are from the West Bank, you spend most of your life at a checkpoint waiting to cross. If you are from like the 1948 land, you fought your right to stay in your house, you're subjected to daily basis harassment and discrimination and segregation at some point. So it's always like a different form of struggle for every kind of Palestinian. Even like, it's not like Palestinians outside of Palestine have ever lived a normal life. We were just saying that there is nothing called normal anymore. It's just an abnormal, that it's either abnormally normal or abnormally abnormal life. So yeah.
We were speaking about this in an earlier episode that we had 6 months after the genocide. We had a panel of Palestinians talking about how it is to be a Palestinian today, and obviously everyone lives in the diaspora. And my cousin was one of them, and she's had a refugee status her whole life, but she was born and raised in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates. But she never got to travel anywhere, and she's never been to Palestine, but she was always seen as a Palestinian refugee. So even though she'd never been to her own country, she still had to suffer the consequences of being a Palestinian.
Yeah, I think I can relate to that. I mean, I was lucky enough and privileged enough to be able to see Palestine like last summer, in the summer of 2023, right before the genocide started. I attended a social medicine course that was organized by the FXB Center at Harvard University and the Public Health Center at Birzeit University in the West Bank. And we were arranged, like the logistics were arranged through the WHO, which has sponsored the Occupied Palestinian Territories office has sponsored this program. And like, we didn't believe it, that like we were waiting for our approval, of course, to cross till the night before we were supposed to be there in July. And then it was, I remember that night very well because it was the night of my last exam in my 4th year. And I was like between preparing for my exam the next morning and waiting for the answer to know if I'm gonna be at the West Bank the next day or not. And then it was approved. And I remember the next morning I went to the exam, I had done my exam, and then I ran to the border. And there was everyone who was accepted with me. We were 11 students. And we crossed, we were together and we crossed to the West Bank. And it was my very first time actually seeing Palestine, because regardless of me crossing to Armenia back in 2016, you're literally being transported within the vehicle and you're not allowed out. So in 2016, when I went out of Gaza, I was in the bus from the moment I left Gaza till the moment I reached the bridge. I remember literally, it was my very first time feeling a heartache because I had just crossed by the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem that I grew up hearing about and seeing pictures of. And I saw it from the window of the bus, but I was never allowed to even step foot outside of the bus to stand there or see it. In 2023, I was allowed to go to Palestine. So I would usually hear stories about Palestine or hear about it, and you always feel that Palestine is this kind of the beyond, like a country you hear about a lot. This is where we are from, and you feel it's some kind of a fairy tale, but it never really feels true. It never feels like this is my land, my country. So in 2023, when I crossed to Palestine, I stood there and I saw it, and you realize the loss that we never experienced ourselves. And now I revisit that place, and I realized my loss in 2023 of the entire Palestine, and now I have also lost Gaza. And it just, I don't know how it's going to be the experience for the future generations, but I know for sure that I don't want them to be at this blindness that we had, that we would never realize what Palestine actually is. So yeah, it was a life-changing experience, and I'm so grateful for it. Like, I don't know when would be the next time I'll be able to visit Palestine or to see it. So yeah,
it's like it's a fantasy. It's like Narnia for some people, I guess. Like, it's just Palestine. It's something we're like reaching for and dreaming of. It's been rough. I've not known Rania that long, but it's been rough for the Palestinians in the diaspora and also Norwegian that's engaged in the cause. But can you try to put into words the last 11 months for you, for someone from Gaza?
Okay. I mean, I lived through the genocide for the exact first 5 months. It's a mixture of helplessness and it reaches a stage of numbness towards what's happening, and you trying to keep on and telling yourself that, okay, you really don't have much of a choice. It's like either you keep on or you're just stuck there forever. And the past 11 months have been an it was an eye-opening experience. First, I remember at the very beginning of the genocide, I would use a pseudonym. I would never use my picture. I would never, whenever I'm speaking about the ongoing situation inside Gaza, from Gaza, I was one of the few privileged people who were able to have a roof overhead and access to a bathroom, was sharing it with only 20 people at the time. And with that privilege, I was able to have internet connection for sometimes. And I have spent a lot of my time during my studying years volunteering in multiple international settings and being given the chance to speak at a platform. So during the ongoing genocide, I would use that platform to speak to medical students from different universities around the world, trying to explain the targeting of healthcare system or the situation in general inside Gaza while still in Gaza. And then you kind of lose hope after a few months that, okay, nothing is actually changing and the killing is only increasing. And maybe we've expected too much of people. And then, you just, okay, I'll keep on going on my own. So it's not an experience you can really settle on a certain word or point where you can actually describe it.
Exactly.
So when you say that you just have to go on your own, what did you do?
For me, I realized that my sense of helplessness can only come to an end if I can do something right where I am at. So I'll start from the circle surrounding me. So I am a medical student. I'm planning to graduate and work as a doctor. So I'll start from there. I'll go to the healthcare facilities and try to help from there. And this is what I've done. So I turned this whole sense of helplessness into trying to do something in the place where I am at. And this is where I started working at a shelter nearby where I was displaced. I had left my home the second day of the genocide, and I was never back. I never went back there. I can't even remember. I didn't take much. I only left with my backpack, and it's gone now, alhamdulillah. So when I left to Rafah, towards the south, I started working with a shelter nearby there.
Because you lived in the north.
Yeah, I lived by the sea. In the northern part of Gaza Strip. It's a neighborhood called Sudaniya, and it's known for being, it's not that populated, and usually houses would have like a surrounding area. That's something you rarely see in Gaza, because Gaza, regardless of it being a very small area, had a population of 2 million people. 10% of which have been either killed or tortured or detained so far. So you usually have crowded places. And because of me living in an area that has empty spaces, usually it is the most intense part when it's being pumped, because of the echo and because of this whole strategy of destroying infrastructures that's being used during wars usually. So you had to, it was not safe. Even if it wasn't that intense at the time, it's always safer to leave early on.
And then when you went down to the south, you said you started working with the medical teams there. What did you specifically do?
I started volunteering at a medical point in one of the UNRWA shelters. For context, we don't have shelters in Gaza. There's no place that you run to when there's bombing. So people usually seek shelters or seek refuge at UNRWA schools. So people would go to the school. A normal classroom would accommodate 45 students, but during war, 45 people would be living in that room. You would have all the men living in classrooms, separate classrooms, and all the women and children in different classrooms. And the entire school would be run by UNRWA employees, and they would be working as volunteers during the wars to facilitate the services to these people. So a school would normally have 1,000 students. During the war at the beginning, or during the genocide at the beginning, we had 15,000 people in one school. Towards the time I left, it was like 45,000 people. You're talking over 50, 60 people in one classroom. A classroom is like maybe half of this area, or even less. We're talking, I don't know, 5 meters by 4 meters.
Oh, that's nothing.
It's literally nothing. People are very crowded. Like, we're talking about an entire family sharing 2 cans of fava beans for lunch. Or like, I don't know, 30 people sharing 1 toilet paper roll. It's crazy. And anyways, I think I'm loud enough for everyone to hear me. But the proportions and the amount of people inside the school were crazy. And at the time I was working in the medical point, we would have to see at least 200 people during the day for children with infectious diseases, or pregnant women, or postpartum women, like women who have just given birth, and some of them who had to give birth inside a tent nearby the school or in one of the classrooms. So yeah.
Fast forward a bit to what was your motivation to start studying medicine? I think you tapped in a bit on it, like.
Okay, so my very first, the clearest memory I have of living in Gaza is the very first time I heard a pump. And I was 8 years old at the time. I was writing my Arabic language exam, and I was doing this thing with like calligraphy, where you have to copy a sentence, and then everything turned I started hearing this horrifying sounds, and I don't know what's happening. And then I remember after that I was running in the street. Lucky enough, my mother is a teacher, and she was working in the same school I was at. So, and I had my brother with me in the same school. So I remember us running, holding my mom's hand, and running in the streets, not knowing where we're going, of course, and continuous sounds of bumping around us. And fast forward to 2023. Okay, by that time I became an expert. Now I can differentiate which sound is this and what kind of an aircraft is going in the sky. And so I always knew that Gaza is where I want to spend my life in. And I wanted to help people the most I can. And for me, helping people equals working as a doctor, an emergency doctor. As you grow up, you realize how fragile our healthcare system is and how restricted our resources are. I mean, for God's sake, at some point during the blockade, chocolate was banned. Or they have this list of banned materials that can be dual used in, creating bombs or anything. And chocolate was one of them. I don't know why. If anyone knows how we can create a bomb of chocolate, please do. But so you're always trying to be restricted in what you can do. And for me, what is more of a better way to spend your life than trying to save your own people? So that's why I wanted to be a doctor at the very first place.
As we've seen countless times, Israel has been bombing both hospitals and schools, systematically destroying Gaza's healthcare and education system. What do you think Israel is trying to do by achieving this?
Well, I know by now if you want to destroy a population, you destroy their youth, their children, and their future. So, and I think at this point they do realize how strong our knowledge is and how ambitious our children are. So I think they're doing that because they want to erase the existence of Palestinians, and targeting their futures is the first step to do that. Yet regardless, we do not give up on our education. I mean, till now you scroll down the Instagram and you see children learning how to read and write in a tent, or children trying to learn. Let's not think of random children. My own sister she's 14 years old. She's still in Gaza, and yesterday we were texting and I was asking her about her day, and she was like, well, alhamdulillah, she speaks English better than I do, and she loves to read. And I was asking her what she was doing, and she was like, I was teaching English to the children of the camp we're staying in. And I never imagined that my first 14-year-old sister would be an English teacher at such time. So I think the answer is within what's happening right now. They know very well that our children are our future. That's why they're targeted.
Yeah. And just to be clear, your sister is still in Gaza?
Yes, my sister and my mother are still inside Gaza. They're currently, unfortunately, they had to leave my grandparents' house from Rafah to move towards the camps in Mawasi or Khan Younis. That's a city in the southern part of the Gaza Strip. And we were supposed to evacuate them earlier, but it didn't happen because of the invasion of the Rafah crossing in May, and it's being completely closed and under the control of the Israeli occupation at the moment.
We have to talk more about that resilience, like your sister. Several healthcare workers that have been to Gaza, they all talk about the extreme resilience and the Palestinian people continue to show, and how they find strength in that. How does one, as a medical student, find that strength in such hard situations?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is when I'll tell you a story of a little girl. Her name was Sama. Alhamdulillah, she's alive. So I met Sama back in November when I was in the shelter. Sama was pulled from under the rubble with her little sister after staying there for several hours, and she had third-degree burns on her back and her thighs, and she would come to the clinic. It's not a clinic. When I say a clinic, it's a classroom with a closet filled with medications that we managed to secure on a daily basis, or we managed to have whenever there was any aid coming into Gaza. So it was literally a classroom, and one doctor and me as an assistant, a nurse, and another volunteering doctor, and 100 other people waiting online, like at a line outside the door. So when Sama was coming, and I would change on her wound like day after day, and I look at her and she's not even crying, and she's holding into her mother's hand, and her mother would be like reciting Quran or reading some du'as or prayers, and she would say, Alhamdulillah, it's all good, and she would smile at the end. And you look at her and how little she is and how well she's taking it, and you do realize that it's the people and their faith and knowing that their existence in this place is the most noble form of resilience and resistance they can have, that gives you the strength to move on. So whenever you're exhausted of working for hours and hours, and you look at them and realize, who am I to be this exhausted if these people are this strong? So I think this is what makes us want to go on and to be better and to work better and harder.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that we also, I mean, we cannot imagine what Gaza is like at all. And it almost feels silly to say, because even we've gotten tired, and because we keep talking about Palestine, we keep protesting, we keep doing all these things, and as you were talking about earlier, feeling that helplessness. I think finding the most important thing in Norway, I think, has been the community sense of trying to help each other in one way or another, tapping someone's shoulder or giving them a hug, but it's amazing to hear about those stories and how they're so grateful, and the strength in their faith, and just the wanting to continue is it's very, very powerful to hear.
And like you said as well, who are we to say something or be tired, or we just have to go on, and we've found a lot of inspiration in the people in Gaza.
Yeah. I think we should give an applause to the people of Gaza. Really.
Yeah, I would do that as well. I would be myself uploading them. I mean, I look at my colleagues in Gaza, they're medical students as well, and they've already finished their 5th year. They've finished their rotations in the remnants of hospitals. They're sitting exams next month. They're doing their oral exams at last month. They had it last week as well, and they're still working to obtain their degrees. And while genocide is still ongoing, and they work as a full-time doctors while still are medical students. So it's just like I do envy them, and for still being there. And for a lot of times, I wish I can go back and be there myself. But yeah, everyone just trying to do what they can while they can.
Exactly.
Yeah. You came. Oh, there's an immense amount of respect for your colleagues in Gaza, obviously, and for you as well. You came out of Gaza first to Egypt, because you were in Gaza the first 5 months, and then you got out. What did you feel when you left Gaza?
Okay, so just to clarify the point of how can people get out of Gaza. So there are 3 ways you can, or those I can remember, that you can get out of Gaza. First, you get out as a dual national, and that's through the foreign ministries of your other nationalities, countries' office. And that was very active at the beginning of the genocide, and then it became harder and harder for countries to evacuate their own citizens. And then the second way, you leave as a medical evacuee, and that's through efforts by the Palestinian Ministry of Health and other ministries of health across the world, or those who are offering aid and trying to evacuate injured people and cancer patients. And the third way is through different, let's say, people controlling the borders and fees being paid, etc. So I was evacuated as a medical evacuee. I left Gaza as a companion to my father, who is a cancer patient. And being a medical evacuee, you also have to wait for lists to be posted the night before. You would need to apply. Like, I applied in November, I left in February. It's a whole restricted process as well, and multiple checking processes and etc. And in order to be a companion, you have to be a female, you have to be a first degree relative, you have to have a valid passport at the time of leaving or a valid ID, etc. And for my situation, it was only me who's fitting all these criteria with my father. So I left Gaza in February with my father. And the moment I stepped outside of the border, I just, I was shocked that the world is still going on. Mm-hmm. That there's still life going on normally. And it's not that it's a border or a building or anything. It's literally a gate, like sometimes not working gate, but you just, a gate was opened and I stepped outside and suddenly the bombing sounds started to diminish and there are people walking normally, vehicles working, and another world. And with time you start to think, how strange it is that there are like two parallel universes going on. One that's of complete destruction, ongoing struggle, and the most basic stuff in life, or a struggle for people living in that spot in the world. And on the other side, it's water is running on, like you open the tap and there's water running and a vehicle working and etc. So it was a very mixed kind of feeling, and me trying to compartmentalize that and deciding on what I can control now and what I can work on. And at the same time, in the back of my head, there is this other parallel universe going on. So it definitely feels that language is not helping me here to describe how it felt, but it most definitely was something that I'm still not fully able to understand or comprehend.
We are very happy that you're here with us, so you can finish your studies and share your stories as well. It's really important to get that real voice from inside, because it's a lot of disinformation out there as well. So thank you so much. Do you have a message for the world and the listeners?
First of all, I want to say how much hope what has happened in Norway has given me. I mean, I don't know if you all know this, but we were first rejected or denied entry to the country, and then later on the decision was changed, and it was only changed by the power of people and them standing up for what's right, amplifying our voices, speaking up about what's right and what's wrong, and giving us a lifeline to be able to stand up again, because education is one of the main routes for us to be able to go back and build it, or rebuild Gaza. So at the time, I almost lost hope in any change being done. But after seeing what has happened in Norway by the people, my whole hope is with the younger generations, seeing them more educated, more knowledgeable about what's going on, being aware of what's going on around them. And that makes you think that at least the future leaders will be smarter ones. I mean, more aware ones. Always try to deconstruct the facts that you're seeing and reconstruct it on your own ways. Ask the questions that you want to ask. Stand up for what you think is right, and never lose hope and how important your voice can be, and how important amplifying those who cannot speak for themselves can be. So my word would be like, first, thank you for always trying to do what's right, regardless of how hard it can be and how much you can sacrifice for that. And the other thing is to always believe in the power education and speaking up have. And I think, this is what I think.
I think this is amazing that you're saying this, because it's very interesting. If someone read the case about that you were denied entry to Norway to resume your studies, it said it was because there's a chance you would want to stay in Norway, which is so, I think it's such an ignorant way of thinking of people that come to Norway as well, that, oh, just because they're coming here, they're gonna stay. Everyone wants to, like you said, your motivation is going back, helping the people of Gaza. Like, this is, I just get so infuriated thinking about how people can be so not willing to help and at the same time feeling superior. And this is, again, like the power of the people that you were saying, the voices, you guys that are speaking up for others' injustice and making it justice is so important. So, yeah.
Yeah. And thank you guys for being here, also for educating yourself and speaking up. I want to applaud you, actually. Applause to you guys.
Yeah. We have one last question for you, but I'm wondering, is there anyone here that has a question? No? Okay, I'll ask the last question to Farah, which is, what is your favorite thing about Gaza?
My favorite thing? Okay, the food, for sure. Yeah, I really love its people. How united. We might seem not united, but we are actually very close to each other. My absolutely favorite thing would be, oh my God, that's a hard question. Like, you're asking me, and I'm very nostalgic. I'm thinking about a lot of stuff. My favorite thing would be, like, definitely the people. Okay, we can go people, food, sea. These are my top 3 things about Gaza.
Can you describe the sea in Gaza for us?
I wish it was less polluted, but it's like, how can I describe it in a way for a person who hasn't seen it before? It's when you feel that everything is closing up at you, and that's literally in the context of Gaza, like literally everything is close at you, and there's this light at the end of the tunnel. That's the sea for us. You stand in front of the sea and you see a whole opened world, like a new horizon you can look at, and it keeps you at check that the world is way out of these borders. You look at the land, you see the fence. You look at the sky, you always see the drones, the aircrafts, and you hear them. But when you look at the sea, you can only see the, I don't know what we call them in English, but you know, the military stuff. You can only see them at night, but at day you definitely can see them, and you feel that it's a whole open world. So it's the freedom and the opportunities and the chances the world has once you stand there. So yeah, that's the sea for me.
Amazing.
Perfect. Okay.
Thank you so much for giving us an insight on Gaza and yourself. And you're only 24 years old, Farah. It's so insane to think about how
23.
23. You're 24 in 3 days.
Okay.
Yeah. But we're very honored to be able to speak to you, and best of luck with continuing your studies. And we think of you and your family, and inshallah everything will stop soon. So.
And thank you for giving us hope. You are a hope in a person, for sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me. It's always my pleasure to be able to talk, and seeing people who are willing to listen gives me hope. So thank you so much for doing this, and I look forward to seeing the future leaders of the world. Please be a kind one. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.